Welcome, wonderful mission peakers and guests. And we're delighted today to have guest minister Becky Leyser. I'll introduce her more formally in just a minute. Meanwhile, we have to ring our bell to get the service underway. So, we ring this bell 3 times. The first is to call us back into covenant. We are on the unceded land of the Mwakma tribe of the Ohlone people. They were displaced, colonized, their land taken. Now we seek to regain their land. Now they seek to regain their land as well as pass on their heritage, customs, and culture to their descendants. Everything we do to restore their rights, equity, equality, and sovereignty is working our way back into covenant. Okay. The second bell calls us into relationship with ourselves and one another, to recognize broken promises, unhealed hurt, lingering scars where being right was more important than being whole. We intentionally gather to invite an ever-widening circle of compassion, commitment, and solidarity until we are all beloved to one another. And the third calls us into relationship with our children and our children's children out to the 7th generation, helping us to realize that what we do now or fail to do will be felt by those who come after us. So, I'd like to introduce our guest worship leader in full here. Reverend Becky Leyser, who is a Unitarian Universalist minister, was ordained in 2023. She has functioned as a chaplain, a spiritual director, and has worked as the Dean of Students for Star King School for the Ministry. She currently is the community minister for the UU Church in Livermore. Becky's passions lie in working with individuals around personal growth and self-care, which is informed by her own work through Women Within International. She has been married for over 30 years and has 2 daughters who both live on the east coast of the United States. Becky says, "I'm so excited to be with you this morning." And we are so excited to have you this morning. As the title says, Reverend Becky will be talking about keeping your balance in a topsy-turvy world. One thing I do to keep my balance is to sing. Shauna, my significant other, studied voice and collaborative piano in college, and while not her day job, is a professional musician who has taught voice and piano and directed choirs. I thought it would be fun to do a duet with her, so I suggested such. She replied, kindly but firmly, that the difference in our skill levels would highlight my lack of voice training. In other words, I'd be glaringly bad in comparison. At least she was nice about the way she said that. I protested that I wasn't that bad, so she had me sing something while she recorded it. Listening to the results, I almost swore off singing. However, Shauna convinced me to take voice lessons, and with her help, I've got those pages numbered backwards. I selected Vaughn Bringhurst, now our esteemed choir director, at the Community Center of Music and Art in Mountain View as my teacher. I just started my 7th year with Vaughn, and a few years back I asked Shauna why it seemed to take so long and require so much practice, especially since I'm such a smart guy. Shauna replied that she often finds her smarter students think that because they are intelligent, it should come easier to them. At least she probably thinks I'm intelligent. It should. Anyway, she pointed out that many tasks, including singing and playing a musical instrument, require building muscle memory. In spite of what Professor Harold Hill says in The Music Man, the think method doesn't really work. You just have to put in the hours of actual practice. Similarly, the methods to keep your balance that Reverend Becky will be talking about in her message also take serious practice to do well. They may seem obvious and easy on the surface, but in the moment, they need to be instinctual. Otherwise, you won't think to use them. So listen attentively as we enter into our time of worship. But wait, there's more. Becky? Please join me in this unison chalice lighting. Love is the power that holds us together and is the center of our shared values. We are accountable to one another for doing the work of living our shared values through the spiritual discipline of love. Thank you. Now Mark's turn.
Greetings and salutations. Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. That was only one. Okay. Welcome to Mission Peak Unitarian Universalist Congregation. I can't mimic Greg on that one. My name is Mark Rahman. My pronouns are he, him, and his, and I'm a member of the board. We're so glad you've joined us this morning, in person and online. So I'm going to start out by highlighting one announcement, which is there are no announcements today. I think that's the first time for me. Okay, Unitarian Universalism is a radically inclusive, non-doctrinal, non-dogmatic, open-minded, and open-hearted faith. We are people who are all coming at truth from different paths. We gather together across different identities, experiences, and beliefs to affirm and promote the inherent worth of every person. Together, we see our job is to love the hate out of this world, heal the hurt in ourselves and one another, and to be the change we'd like to see in the world. If you're our guest for the first time, we welcome you. Here's a bit of information on how our hybrid services work. We use chat in Zoom or our book near the welcome table to share joys and concerns, personal milestones of importance, which will be read aloud in the service. That's true. We also have social hour after the service where we get to visit with one another in breakout rooms if you're online or on the patio in person. The worship host will give you more information online about this immediately after the service. Someone from our membership team will put a link in our weekly to our weekly newsletter in chat so you can see all of the events coming up. We encourage you to join anything that speaks to you. We also put our welcome email, welcome@mpuuc.org, to request a newsletter or other information to be sent to you. If you're here in person, our welcome table is right over there, where you can sign up to receive a newsletter or ask any questions you may have. And finally, please make sure that your mobile devices are silenced. Okay, and we are so glad to be together today. And let's end by asking everyone in Zoomlandia and everyone in Cole Hall to wave to one another and feel the joy of being one large, beloved community. Welcome and thank you to our members and friends near and far. And at this time, we will have our opening hymn, number 18, What Wondrous Love.
a book to share with you today for the time of all ages. It's called I Am Human, a book of empathy by Susan Verde and art by Peter H. Reynolds. I was born a miracle, one of billions, but unique. I am human. I am always learning. I'm finding my way and choosing my path on this incredible journey. I have big dreams. I see possibility. I have endless curiosity. I make discoveries. I have a feeling of wonder. I am amazed by nature. I have a playful side. I find joy in friendships. I am human. But being human means I am not perfect. I make mistakes. I can hurt others with my words, my actions, and even my silence. I can be hurt too. I can be fearful of things I don't yet understand and timid to try something new. I have a heavy heart when I feel sadness. I am human. And then I remind myself that because I am human, I can make choices. I can move forward. A poor choice can become a better choice with thoughtfulness. A bad day can become a great day with kindness. I can act with compassion and lend a helping hand. I can treat others with equality and be fair. I can choose not to fight, but instead to listen and find common ground. I can say, I'm sorry, and ask for forgiveness. I am human, one of billions, but unique. I'm not alone. I'm connected to my friends, to my family, to the world. We are all humans together.
Well, hello again, folks. So we take up a collection on Sundays for the simple reason that our purpose in gathering is for more than ourselves. We want to make sure that the ministries that we need, the ones that infuse worth, dignity, and empathy into our children, our youth, and even our adults, our programs of learning and leadership, and our ministries of anti-oppression, and our work in the larger world are in place to meet the needs of others. We hope you will make a contribution toward these worthy causes by mailing your check to Mission Peak UU congregation at the address on the screen. You can also use bill pay option in your online banking, or drop your check in the Mission Peak mail slot in the door to the office down the far end there. Or you could even pay online with credit or debit card. So many ways to give. Thank you for supporting and sustaining the efforts of our members, friends, and staff. Your contributions make loving, learning, and leadership more possible. Okay. Now, one of the things that allows us to find hope and meaning, especially in the hard times, is the love and support we show one another. If you have a joy or concern that by sharing with this caring community might bring you encouragement or resilience you are needing, please write it briefly now in the chat. Please write briefly your name and whether you're sharing as a joy or concern. If you are here in person, you can use the book by the welcome table over there. Please write clearly because I may have trouble reading it otherwise. And would like to place a stone for joy or concern, you may do so while the music plays. If your need is personal, you can also send an email to our minister for a follow-up conversation. Right, here are some of the joys and concerns in our hearts this week. One last stone for the hopes and hurts still too tender to escape. Our heart. We encourage everyone to contact those who have shared joys or concerns. In this way, we take part in the creation of a caring community by keeping our hearts, our minds, and our arms and our doors open.
This reading is an excerpt from a book called Strong Ground by Brené Brown. She writes, on this sunny afternoon in a local community center, on an old varnished wood and basketball court, where makeshift pickleball lines were marked off with blue painter's tape, and a crappy portable tent was barely standing upright, I served the ball as hard as I could. My opponents were better than me, and after weeks of trying to earn my way into a game with them, I was eager to impress. The ball hit my paddle, and the next thing I knew, I was lying on the ground, trying to catch my breath and wondering if I'd been stabbed. 4 weeks after the incident, I was anxious to make a plan to get back to the court, and a friend referred me to a trainer named Tony. Tony's my age, smart, strong, occasionally funny when he's not standing on a sled bossing me around, and he has a very disciplined approach to training and running his business. His specialty is functional strength training, built on an evidence-based protocol. The first thing he had me do was a series of tests that measured my strength, agility, mobility, and balance. I hate that stuff. I want to be on the court, smashing the ball and competing. I don't want to stand on one foot, bend down 3 inches while holding a stick. I mean, give me a break. When I finished the last test, he looked at me and he said, "You scored a 10. I smiled, raised my fist in the air. "Of course I did, let's go!" He said, "No, you scored a 10 out of 22. That means your potential for injury is very high and your core is weak. We're going to get you stable first." I looked at Tony and said, "All right, let's have it. Tell me everything." Tony laid it out in simple terms. We will not build on dysfunction. We're not going to start lifting and pushing until we understand what's going on with your body. This test reveals a weak core. Your lats, your stomach, your glutes, they need to be much stronger if you want to play as hard as you're playing. Later in the book, Brené draws an analogy between rebuilding her core and attending to core business basics. She writes, "Despite intellectually knowing better, I, like the vast majority of the leaders with whom I work, reached first for tools you can purchase in the hope that a slick external resource might save me from the time and energy-consuming work of transformation. We all have to resist the magical thinking that there's a suite of tools that will bring about big change and require less determination, less discipline than work necessary to produce meaningful, lasting change. There is no app for transformation." Thank you. That was beautiful. Brené Brown is a podcaster, author, and professor who espouses the benefits of vulnerability in leadership. Although her research and the grounded theories that evolved from the data are geared mostly towards business leadership, I found her work to be pertinent to religious leadership too. She has a new book out entitled Strong Ground, which looks at what leaders need to do if they want to win, as opposed to just not lose. The concept of playing to win versus playing not to lose comes from A.G. Lafley, an American businessman, who states that playing to win focuses on opportunities and growth by envisioning desired outcomes, taking calculated risks, and making decisions decisively. This approach tends to motivate people. Playing not to lose, on the other hand, typically is motivated by fear and employs strategies such as avoiding negative outcomes, analyzing decisions to the point of hesitation, and prioritizing safety, predictability, and preservation of what currently is. It also tends to suck the joy out of whatever you're talking about. I participated in lots of church boards and lots of businesses that have been stuck in a game of trying not to lose. And honestly, I often wonder if our U.S. Congress is stuck in the same game. So I think it's worth our while to look at some of the strategies Brené Brown suggests we engage to win. Now, I want to tell you, the book is chock-a-block full of strategies that empower mindsets needed to pursue the win, so I recommend it and her podcasts to you. I found the material dense, so it may require a little bit of focus time and attention. And I think it's a worthy investment. She uses grounded theory research where the strategies she conveys comes out of the data, so it's like the ideas are already field tested. I heard about the first strategy I want to tell you about on a podcast where Dr. Brown was engaging questions from listeners about the book. Someone asked her, "What one mindset shift do you think leaders often overlook when facing complex challenges?" And to illustrate her answer, she started with this quote: "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom." I want to repeat that. Between stimulus and response, there's a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. This quote indirectly mandates that we recognize both the stimulus and the response. We have to explore what limits or broadens the space so that we have the opportunity to choose our response. And it is in our best interest to explore our relationship to each of these factors. Let's take an example. Let's say my husband says to me, "This dish is too salty." And to make it a little more interesting, let's say it's a brand new recipe that I've been excited about and that I've spent most of the afternoon working on. If I don't recognize that his statement is a stimulus and the things that I am now thinking that are just dying to jump out of my mouth are the response, I may not recognize that I have a choice in how I respond. How many times have you heard somebody say, after being called to account for something that they said, "I couldn't help it"? I'm guessing that that person didn't recognize those three variables. If I don't utilize the space between his statement and my response, my initial reaction might be in itself rather salty. I might say something like, so don't eat it. However, if I recognize that this is a moment when having space between his statement and my reaction could be helpful, I might employ one of several different strategies to make that space just a little bit bigger. I could take a breath. I could, very intentionally, finish chewing my last bite and lay down my fork. I could take a drink of water. And understanding my relationship to both the stimulus and the response may impact how I want to take that space. For example, I may need to take a drink of water instead of taking a breath, so my mouth will be full and I can't say what I'm thinking until I have a chance to consider my options. Creating this space and making it big enough does several things. It gives me a chance to control my snarkiness. It may send a message, albeit passively, to my beloved that statement did not feel good. And it may give me a chance to consider what I want to do. Like, maybe I want to consider my values. Like, I'm committed to being curious about what other people say, so maybe I need to hear them out. Maybe I want to consider what I know to be true. Like, I know that my husband loves me, and he would never actually wish to hurt me. Or maybe I want to actively share with him how this made me feel. Ouch, Jeffrey. Doing these things allows me to have a more measured response, which can keep my behavior more fully in line with who I want to be. Super easy, right? As you can imagine, the more complex the situation, the more consequential the choice you make. Or said another way, the more freedom and growth you may encounter. Now, here's another Brené Brown strategy I found helpful, and I think it deepens and broadens what we just talked about. This is the concept of near and far enemies. It comes from a Buddhist precept typically applied to the four immeasurables, and Brené Brown uses the concept in relation to values, and I think she does it to good effect. I'm going to knock this over, so I'm going to push it away. If you believe that generosity is a value that you should work to embody, you naturally would work against the far enemy, which is just the opposite. In this case, it could be stinginess or selfishness. However, there is a near enemy, and we don't always consider it, but we should, because it masquerades as the value that you're talking about, but it's actually fighting against it. So in this example, the near enemy of generosity may be self-sacrifice or even martyrdom. Now, as you consider this, you might think to yourself, no, wait a minute. Generosity often requires a bit of self-sacrifice, but it doesn't really. If you consider the definition of generosity, giving of yourself without expectations of anything in return, and then you consider the definition of self-sacrifice, the giving up of one's own interests or wishes in order to help others or advance a cause, you see that there is an expectation in self-sacrifice. You're expecting that you're going to either help others or you're going to advance a cause. And if I'm honest, when I consider how it feels, I'm aware that sometimes in myself, I also have other subtle expectations. Like sometimes when I'm self-sacrificing, I want people to notice. And sometimes I even want to be appreciated. Okay, so let's go back to my husband telling me my dish is salty. And let's assume that in the space I created by taking that sip of water, I remember that my value is curiosity. Now, I know for me that the far enemy of curiosity is disinterest. I don't care what he has to say about this. And clearly that is not at play because I'm triggered. So let's consider the near enemy to curiosity to see what I have to sidestep with that. The near enemy might be attachment. I'm curious, but really only as long as I like his opinion. If I'm going to embody curiosity in that moment, I have to muster up inside of myself the real desire to know more about the saltiness of the dish. Because if I just say, oh, how's that? And he simply says, well, it just is, we may yet get into a fight. But if I can truly be curious, defined as a strong desire to learn or know something, my sweetheart may, in fact, help me to discover that, oh, I used salted butter and I also salted the dish. So now we've not only avoided a fight, but I learned something to boot. Okay, here's the third strategy to win the game. As I said at the top, Dr. Brown talks about vulnerability, courage, and empathy as key concepts needed to be effective leaders. In yet a different podcast, she talked about how because as human beings we can't always be vulnerable, courageous, and empathetic, we have to build systems that are braver than people. She says, James Clear says it another way. He states, we don't rise to the level of our goals. We fall to the level of our systems. I really like that. To unpack that, let's consider this church's mission statement. The church website states, we are a spiritual community of open minds, nurturing growth and healing in ourselves and all people. So, are you able to help each other grow and heal all the time? Probably not. So, let's take a scenario. I show up to the board meeting, running in the door just before the chalice is lit. We're going to assume you light a chalice. And I'm tired because my kiddo kept me up half the night with a toothache. And on top of that, I tried to counteract the sleepiness, so I'm overcaffeinated and underhydrated. And because I was late getting here, I haven't had my most current meal. Now, I don't know about you, but given these circumstances, I might have a hard time finding my ability to grow and heal in me, let alone supporting you. But let's pretend for a moment that a very wise version of this board recognized that people are human and that sometimes we need a little help. And let's pretend for a moment that because of that, this wise version of the board built a system and hardwired it into the board meetings to help us grow. It put into effect having a moment of silence at the beginning of each board meeting to allow us to arrive with our emotions, our spirit, our bodies, and our minds all intact, all together. And let's say that it also embedded in the board meeting a check-in at the beginning, so we know what each one of us is walking in the door with. These systems allow us to be human and to fall down for a moment, and that's okay. These systems provide space so that somebody might be able to say, wow, that sounds like a really hard day. Do you need a minute? Do you need anything? Somebody else might say, I have a bad habit of skipping lunch, so I carry these peanut butter crackers in my purse. Would you like these? Would that help? Putting in these structures might better enable me as an individual to meet my values even on the worst day. Dr. Brown and her guest go on to talk about how some concepts require not only individual work, the intrapersonal work, like the work you do to become your best self, but also collective work, interpersonal work. Dr. Brown says, I do believe that skills building happens in relationship. I don't think you move from knowing something to integrating it and becoming it without relationship. That's why communities like this church are so important. We believe in our individual ability to become better people. And then we challenge each other. We encourage each other. We celebrate each other when we do become better people. And that challenge, that encouragement, that celebration, it's a part of the process. So if we take these strategies, separating stimulus and response and using the space in between to become more adept in how we respond, and use the concept of near and far enemies with our values so that we become more self-aware, and in our church and in our communities, we consider hardwiring our values into the structures to ensure that the behaviors associated with those values can be enacted more consistently, rather than relying on each of us to be resourced enough to do it ourselves all the time. We are more likely to show up grounded and thus better balanced to take on all the uncertainty that is so readily available in the world right now. To my way of thinking, we're better equipped to win the game of life. Close your eyes for a minute. Really see that world where we support one another, we challenge one another, we celebrate one another, and we do these things consistently. Can you see that world? That gives me hope. May it be so. If you would stand as you're willing and able, or stand physically or mentally, and sing with us hymn number 86, Blessed Spirit of My Life, I'd be grateful. Will you say these words with me as we extinguish the chalice? We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth. the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Well, that was exciting.
Have to have a little excitement here and there. You know, I'm the community minister at Livermore, and these words are the same words that we say at Livermore, and so there's a sweetness to me about how our two congregations are pulled together in that way. Brené Brown says, "It turns out that trust is, in fact, earned in the smallest of moments. It's earned not through heroic deeds or even highly visible actions, but through paying attention, listening, and gestures of genuine care and connection. May we show up for each other. May we show out for one another. And may we love one another until we come together again." Amen.